All right, so I was thinking how we'd start today's podcast, and I was kind of wondering, as I was walking around today, guys, what are some of your favorite donuts? What's the best donuts that you've ever had?
Well, my go-to has always been a Boston cream, because I'm not a huge I'm not a big sweet tooth. And I actually don't remember the last time I had a Boston cream, or a donut for that matter. But if I had to go for one, it's been over like a year and a half. But if I had to choose one, it's been definitely Boston cream.
Yourself, Michael? Yourself?
Okay, Boston cream's a good choice. I think for me, if I'm heading over to Tim's, I have a donut craving, I'm probably going with the old-fashioned.
The old-fashioned glaze?
Yeah. No.
Just old-fashioned? No glaze, even?
Yeah, 100%, man.
Wow.
100%. Yeah.
Is that just a bagel at that point?
You know what? Not a bad idea.
I think it's a dog treat, actually.
Put some cottage cheese or... Yeah, nice.
I like a Boston cream. I like a honey cruller. I think it's interesting you guys went straight for Tim Hortons, a couple of truly Canadian boys. There's a spot near my place, though, with a bit more of gourmet donut options. Donut Monster, if you guys ever want to get an amazing donut. They have it here in Stocked Market, but I'm sure there's other locations. I don't know. They make really good donuts, so I hope there's other locations. And you can probably just get it on Uber Eats or whatever too, while you're listening to this podcast, And when we're not sponsored or anything, but
just pause, Uber Eats a box of donuts, and then eat your way in to a 12-pack of donuts while you listen to us ramble on. I think that'd be a great idea.
If you got a 12-pack of donuts from that place,
and then go straight for a 12K run right after this podcast.
People are gaining weight today, apparently.
Oh yeah.
Don't forget to drink 12 beers as well. You're gonna want to have a beer per donut. But anyways, that's probably enough senseless banter that we can get into the real intro here.
Senseless. I thought that was.
I mean, not photography related. It was pertinent for sure, and enlightening, and I think will probably revolutionize a lot of the way that things are done in this country. So I'm glad we talked about that. But here we go. I've got an intro song for you guys. And just in preparing for the podcast here, thought about a couple of songs, was kind of asking our guest here, who we'll reveal in a moment after the song, but asking our guest for some song ideas. We were thinking maybe going in a more pop direction, but Michael's right. We're gonna stick with the classic rock direction for now, guys. But basically what I did to come up with today's song, I just Googled what are the top 10 songs ever in the universe. And this one's on there. So if you guys don't like this song, you would disagree with the internet and everybody on it. So that's more of a you problem, but I think it's a pretty good song. Here we go. Hey bros, don't be so sad. Get on the podcast and make it better. Remember that photography's an art. Then you can start to shoot much better.
Okay. Some Beatles. Some
Beatles. Usually we get it more, jacked up, but I thought it was just a little bit beautiful for you guys today.
I like the it's a good cover.
Yeah, I think there's a few ways to play that song, but I went with the capo approach, because then you can just play basic chords and get through it. But anyways, welcome to the podcast, everybody. I'm your photographer, Jared Poirier. We've got another photographer over there, Michael Costa, and a very special guest today. You guys don't have to just look at me and Michael pasty faces on the podcast. Today we have a new face, Well, I guess you won't be looking at his face if you're only listening to it. But we have Chris Chan.
Hello.
Photographer extraordinaire. Chris Chan is here.
Slightly less pasty. We haven't seen this yet.
Slightly less pasty Chris Chan. He hasn't had as much sun as usual, but I think he's still been shooting a little bit of photos and whatnot, right? He's got a lot of monitors. I know that. I can see
monitors
that,
for sure. Yeah.
So I'm assuming you've been taking some photos to fill up those monitors. You probably have to take like 3 times as much photos just to get them filled, you know?
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So we appreciate you being here, man. I'm sure Michael Costa has a lot of questions for you. Our second guest ever, so we're both very excited. If we screw anything up or come off as a bit nervous, then that's probably why. But we don't have a lot
as we all
of.
do. We're supposed to. We're supposed to mess up as much as we can, just so future podcasts are constantly improving. Right?
That's true. We kind of want to make sure that we bomb every once in a while, just so that there's something to compare it to. So,
Exactly.
so yeah, what do you want to talk about, man? We kind of want to just make this fun for you. So, what do you want to talk about today?
Wow, I feel like I'm going to an amusement park and it's designated just for me. Well, I think that one of the things we kind of discussed before we started this was you guys were interested in. I guess the whole background, and this is something that's blown up in the last, I guess, 4 or 5 years of cosplay photography and the pluses and minuses of the scene, so to speak, therein.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, that's definitely an interesting topic to get into. Michael, do you have any like personal connection to cosplay or cosplay photography at all? You ever dress up like Thanos or anything like that?
Never dressed up as Thanos. I was a big fan of going to the fan expos though, back in the, prior to the pandemic, all that.
Vid.
But
All that stuff.
yeah, the vid. But there was one year where I was like, I'm going to dress up. I'm going to do something, but I'm going to do something different. And, I put on a suit and I put on a paper bag over my head, cut out holes, and then wrote "I am not famous anymore," and I was Shia LaBeouf, and it was a big hit. Got a lot of stops. My peripherals were terrible, but a lot of photo ops.
Hard to shoot photos with a paper bag.
Well,
Yeah, hard to move.
The best is that nobody recognizes you, so you can just carry on your merry way, even while being a celebrity.
That's right, of course. Because if I didn't have that bag on, people would stop me right, left, and
They'd be
center.
stopping.
You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
then
yeah.
you'll have problems day to day.
They'd be like,
Oh,
"Is that
yeah.
Hugh? Is that Hugh Jackman? Hugh, come over here."
Oh yeah.
You get the lot?
No, never.
Just making sure.
never been confused for Hugh Jackman in my life.
So I do have a Spider-Man costume. For those of you who don't know, I mean, if you've listened to this podcast before, you probably know by now that I'm a nerd, right? I got a Yoda around here somewhere. He's up there. I've got my Darth Vader mug that I'm sipping out of right now. So big nerd. I've been to Comic-Con or whatever, those types of conventions a few times. Love checking out the cosplay. One thing is that I was struck by the dedication that people have to cosplay. They spend a lot.
Yeah, it's
I'm sure you'll speak
It's
to
so
this
cool.
as well, Chris. But the amount of dedication and time and just how much of an industry that it is, right? That's one of the things
time.
about it that's amazing. Yeah.
Time and money, and there is it's a ridiculous amount of dedication in order. And some of these crafters are absolutely incredible. They're making something out of nothing, essentially. So it's quite inspirational to see. Well, they have source material, but it's quite inspirational to see how they can take something like source material and then turn it into something real out of nothing more than foam and some hot glue most of the time.
Some latex maybe, whatever
Yeah.
you need, foam. Some of them are transformers that transform.
Yeah,
You know,
oh, yeah,
people-
So cool.
Those are
People
crazy.
they go wild with it. But
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
sure I'm sure Michael will have a few questions for you. I want to get a couple in just right off the bat here as my coffee starts to hit me and I start to get amped up on the podcast. But yeah, kind of, we've shared a little bit of our personal history with cosplay. I mean, I don't know if Michael's is technically cosplay, bro. Like, you got to throw on a Spider-Man or something.
Well,
I don't know. We'll get into
that
it.
Counts. What you do counts.
Okay, well, you're the expert. So I suppose it counts. But yeah, man, how did you get into the whole like cosplay photography scene?
Okay, so it is funny that you mention latex because I was working a lot of times in fashion long before I started doing any cosplay stuff. And one of my friends, Melanie, she actually makes latex clothing. So, it's part of high fashion, part of the stuff that I was doing a lot of at the time. So I was involved a lot with like the latex and the fetish scene, and so there's like there's a bit of crossover from that to the people that wore latex as costumes for with superheroes, because honestly, latex is one of those things that it's kind of this very uncomfortable but very comfortable to wear, but it makes everybody look like a superhero. So I met up with actually one of my friends, Holly Wolf. She was wearing an outfit that Melanie made, and partially at least that Melanie made, and from that I think that's kind of where things kind of took off, because I was shooting really nicely lit, fashion kind of photos, but with cosplay involved, and so everybody looked epic in these outfits. Latex shines really well, so that's kind of how I got started into even the whole thing on that. So I had all the stuff to shoot it like it was fashion, but it turned out great that it was that it crosses over into really nice lighting for cosplay photography.
That's awesome.
Yeah, nice.
Now, sorry, 3-person podcast, it's hard to know sometimes, my bad. I was curious to know, and obviously Jerry can speak to this, it's always nice to get an idea of equipment and what people are using. I know we were talking a little bit before the podcast started. You were talking about how you like to use your gels for your strobes. Curious to know, like what, I mean, we already know what camera you use, but maybe just for the individuals who are coming in, what camera you use and maybe what strobes you use typically, maybe their apertures or something.
Well, right up until about a month ago, I would say, I was using my Canon 5D Mark II.
Okay.
So I was shooting with that for a good longer than a decade. Because I've never found the need to upgrade. I've always been there's a whole bunch of features that I've always wanted in a camera, and every single time that they release a new one, it didn't have any of the new stuff that I thought it would warranted a new investment in the camera. So I was like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So that has been my workhorse for a while. My strobes I use are Alien Bees, both the 1800s and the 1600s. 1600s mainly for the background gels, because when you're using gels, you have to flash it a lot brighter than normal. So I use the 1600 usually for the backdrop and the 800s for the keys. And I use Pocket Wizard triggers and stuff like that.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's so interesting that you bring up those points. Like on our last podcast, we were actually literally talking about how there was an article written on Petapixel, and there was this photographer, and he's a photographer primarily similar to you. I think you said usually you do, it's more photography work, correct? I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Yeah. Right.
But yeah, and so he's similar to him in his experience. And so for him, he was like, I've been shooting DSLR for so long. And, it didn't very similar. He had the same camera for a while and didn't want to switch over. And, it was just a lot of functionality on the photography side where it was like, okay, well, I don't see a significant jump. Obviously on the video side, there's been quite some innovation.
Massive.
Yeah. But on the photo side, yeah. So I totally understand. why you kind of stuck to it. And plus, you said the 5D Mark II, right?
Yeah.
Great camera. Like I had that for a while. The only reason I didn't have anymore is because I dropped it downstairs.
That would be a good reason to not have that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Unfortunately, nobody has developed cameras that can easily be dropped down the stairs just yet. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chris had that look in his eye like he just had a business idea. He was like, "Oh,
I mean, yeah, there's something. Bubble wrap the
Stair-proof?
person, or bubble wrap the stairs, or something. Who knows?
bubble wrap your camera, or bubble wrap your models, bubble wrap yourself maybe as well. You know,
And that's a whole shoe concept.
you want."
Ooh.
That's what we do here, you know.
Nice.
We're here for organic conversation and organic ideas. One more question I want to throw at you, Chris. I hope you don't feel like we're just, you know, like you're in the middle of the ring and we're just like shooting arrows at
no,
you.
it's fine.
You know.
I mean, I could take arrows in the knee as much as the next
Okay.
person.
Well, we'll shoot for the knees then. But another question that I definitely want to get in terms of like you know, helping some other photographers or even helping myself, man. I would love to do some cosplay type of photography. So you know, it's a very like attractive area of photography to get into, let's just say, right? Like a lot of people are drawn to that. There's a lot of people who are nerds. Quite frankly, a lot of people want to shoot photos with sexy women. That's another part of it, right? So you know, if someone is into that, like let's say that they really you know, like the X-Men or whatever, they really like DC Universe and they want to start shooting some cosplay photography, like what would you tell them you know, in as advice, like a way to kind of get into that industry, or at least like start to put the idea out there that you want to get into that industry?
Well, I think the big part of it is, especially starting out, trying to shoot cosplay photography any different than you're shooting any type of portrait photography.
Nice.
It's shooting it differently would be kind of like a mistake, kind of just to start out, because honestly, if you can get like the lighting and the angles right of people in general, if that's the thing that you shoot, that's more important than trying to, you know, run before you walk, so to speak. So if you can get lighting right and you can kind of control lighting in the way that you want, and I think cosplay photography, a lot of it has to do with external lighting. Doing natural lighting, it works and it's cool, but learning how to use strobes and learning how to use speed lights and triggers, that's kind of like a good first start, because natural light, as great as it is for most basic portrait photography, it doesn't provide that scale of like epicness and like the shadow that comic books and a lot of movies and stuff like that. That kind of thing that they portray. So if you get some time to just work in the studio and learn how to use strobes or hot lights, that goes a long way to helping you get by there. So that's how to start.
Right. That learning those like technical things and getting the look in the photos right is a really important first step, right? If you're gonna be attracting talent and stuff like that, right?
Yeah. So it's even as a hobby type of thing, it's just a good idea to start off with good, well lit portrait photography, and then once you kind of have that there, I found that to divert from as a diversion from portrait photography, you start introducing a lot more shadows and a lot more like edge lighting in cosplay photography over regular portrait photography. So you start playing around a lot more with that, and then of course, if the cosplayer is the one that built the outfit, a lot of them they have, you know, particular poses they have in mind that they usually memorize or whatever, because half the time I don't even know what these characters are that I'm shooting. I just kind of like learn about their setting and then try to find a setting in the background that works, and then, you know, that's how you kind of progress from there. But honestly, a lot of people, and you guys have mentioned that you went to Fan Expo and do all that. There's a lot of different places to shoot around there, and that works for a lot
Hell
of
yeah.
like fantasy characters, and like obviously not inside the con, even though there's a lot of creepy photographers that sit in photography alley.
We'll get into it.
Yeah.
We'll get into
it. But, yeah, but there's a lot of that kind of just sit around indoors. But the thing is that the photos, they look manufactured because everybody has the same photo with the same backdrop and the same everything, and you don't get that depth of field. You don't get proper lighting. Like even if you do get proper lighting, it just kind of looks really manufactured and basic. So honestly, just step outside, and there's a whole bunch of places around lots of cons that you can do a lot of great photos in those areas.
Nice,
so
man. Nice.
Get out and try to do outdoors as much as you can for this kind of stuff.
Crazy. I love that advice. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's one thing I was thinking about when I learned that we were going to be talking to you, was location. I guess one question I have to tie into that and something else you said prior to was, when it comes to, shooting with somebody and they have their, their concept or their outfit, how much does their character play into location, and what kinds of things are you keeping in mind when you're scouting for that?
So once you start getting into like pro, so to speak, cosplay photography, location is a big part of it. Now obviously it depends somewhat on what you're shooting for. Some people are shooting content to sell to people. Some people are shooting epic photos for to be shot at cons. So what they're kind of looking for is kind of either dictate if your scouting is going to be difficult or it's going to be really, really easy. Some people are just simple. They just want indoors clean lighting, and they just want it shot on a bed or a couch or whatever. But then outdoor location scouting for epic photos, I think it's really important because it kind of ties everything together. It's either you're really, really, really good at compositing, or you just find a great location that suits the character that you're shooting. I think it honestly more so than the shoot and the build of the build of the costume. Location scouting takes up the most time.
Yeah, I can imagine that being also a bit more fun though than location scouting for maybe some other kinds of gigs, because it's almost like you get to use your imagination a bit. If you're shooting someone who's dressed as Zelda, then it's cool, I need to find a really wide open landscape. Or if I'm shooting cyberpunk, maybe it's like a railroad track or something really techy if it's something something futuristic. But I can see that being actually a lot of fun at the same time, while also being potentially a lot more work as well.
Yeah. So a lot of these comics, they deal with dystopic societies and stuff like that. So you're trying to find locations that kind of do that. They're a lot more interesting than going to shoot, basic bitch regular photos, right? Somewhere in a park, so you have a lot more variety in things that you're looking for, but the payoff actually is huge, because these things aren't used in portrait photography very often. They're used they're imagination settings that are brought to real life.
Right. I've got a spot I should share with you near our place, actually, Chris. The creepy bridge here. I don't want to say too much. I don't want to give away our spot. Everyone's gonna get down there, but there's a nice creepy bridge, really cool graffiti and stuff down there. So maybe I have traditionally shot down there a lot, but then I've gotten into a few bum fights there. Okay. So yeah. Well,
I mean, that might be for another podcast, but
we'll have to have you back and talk about some of the other difficulties that photographers face. So as we're talking about some of the difficulties faced by photographers, here's one that we're going to definitely need to touch on. We mentioned it a little bit earlier, but when you're in photographer's alley down there, you're looking at your cosplay, there's some girls out there in some pretty revealing outfits sometimes, but you know what, they're doing it for them. They're doing it to be the character. They're not doing it there to be creeped on, which is kind of a bit of an issue. in this space. So let's talk to that a little bit, Chris. Like what's been maybe some personal experiences that you've had in that kind of direction, or just even like general things that you've heard about in the industry.
Yeah, I mean, this kind of is one thing that definitely travels through the entire industry. So if you ever just look up,
and film as well, obviously.
Film, like
Modeling.
any type of industry that involves, I guess subjecting people, because that's kind of what it is. You're putting people as a subject. There's always people that come in, I guess, from kind of a illusion of a position of power when you're holding a camera, because at the end of the day, a lot of cosplayers are pretty poor, so or they have like anxiety or depression or whatever, so they turn to this craft in order to help them get over and through stuff. It gets them out of the shell, it lets them be creative, or it lets them make money. So at the end of the day, in order for people to kind of get that boost of self-confidence or get the word out of the thing that they've made that they're very proud of, they need photos of it. So a lot of photographers kind of hold that as a position of power to say, hey, I have something that you need, now you got to work with me or something. And how easy it is nowadays to get a camera. Like even like 10 years ago when like prosumer cameras were just starting to become popular, anybody and their mom or their dad or grandpa can go and pick up a camera and just say that, hey, this is what this is what I'm doing now. This is a great way to meet a hot woman or whatever, right? So, I mean, it is a way, but I mean, it's not. I think that what has happened a lot, especially in the last 10 years, is that a lot of people started taking this as a really creepy way to take advantage of people. So, and you'll see this a lot, especially at like Fan Expo and other conventions, is that you'll have essentially a lot of people that are kind of there for the wrong reasons. Like, it's not to say that their photos are good or bad. That's completely subjective. But they're going about it, meeting people, and then they're just being really creepy towards them. And a lot of these women, they kind of take it and they just dismiss it, or they just brush it aside, as opposed to, I wish more people would speak up more about it, and that way people, can be more aware and know what's the difference between, good consent and bad consent. Which is why, I mean, even you look at Fan Expo nowadays, you have all these signs everywhere, cosplay is not consent, just because you're wearing something, revealing and looks great, and it's, comic book accurate or film accurate, how ridiculous people draw these characters, but they want to do something that they're proud of, and it's not an invitation for these people that are to be creeps, essentially. So that's kind of like the long and short of it. But I mean, this extends to any type of photography. All you have to do is look up like, hell, Toronto photographer arrested for X, right? Just honestly Google that and you'll find, dozens of examples.
There's I know there's a blacklist for photographers in Toronto.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the good thing about a blacklist is that it helps people that are in the group. The people that aren't in the group or don't know about it, or people like, if somebody wants to be a creeper and find new models to shoot with, it is very easy to do that, and they're not on the list. They don't know, right? So they're not looking this up, and they don't. It doesn't happen. They don't start looking stuff up, or maybe if they even start looking stuff up, until a bad experience happens to them. So sometimes it's too little, too late, I think, for a blacklist.
you'd think that just like the existence of the internet sometimes would, you know, solve some of these problems, and it does, right? It does help to bring these issues to light, you know, like social media is a way of kind of exposing that stuff. But yeah, it's unfortunate that it still goes on in so many creative industries, as you're talking about that stuff too, about it just kind of being like you know, not directly addressed and just sort of shoved aside. Remind me of a lot of like my experience in the restaurant industry and stuff like that too. Kind of a similar things can happen there. But you know, just so we're not depressing everybody so much on the podcast and talking about problems. No. Think, what do you think are some ways that like this can be solved though? Like what are some ways to address this problem?
I think awareness is a big part of it. Yeah. Having people, like, honestly, a big problem is that the internet's so big and it's so vast. Yeah. The good thing is that the more, like, there are some really top tier cosplayers, and a lot of these younger and this is just specifically looking at cosplayers. A lot of these you know, smaller time cosplayers that, you know, are kind of doing it as a hobby or trying to make a career out of it, they're looking up to a lot of these top tier, so to speak, cosplayers that have it, that are making, you know, good money doing this. I think that having people that are kind of respected and idolized a little bit, if they have that message out there to teach people what the red flags are, to share the right post. Like, I just shared a post recently on my Facebook about, you know, how, you know, models are just abused, and it's not up to, you know, they're not there for the reasons that half these photographers are there for.
You can share podcasts episodes
you can share podcast episodes
these issues.
Yeah, so I think that people, the more that people share about it, the more that people know about it, you end up getting an environment where you kind of have herd immunity around this stuff. So you know, for the most part, people know who to cancel, so to speak, if to quote cancel culture.
Or just who to avoid, you know.
Yeah, who to avoid.
Who to put out the word that, you know, maybe steer clear of this guy. We don't want to be sending witch hunts after people, but I also think that, you know, if photographers are well known and there's very, you know, very reputable accusations against them by like a lot of people, then it's definitely time to talk about it. So
and it's not even like going to blacklist. Like, blacklist is just a very minuscule amount of the problem photographers that are out there. I think that the awareness of, you know, the patterns and the red flags to look for, and having those up front and seeing that and having everybody kind of armed with that knowledge, people know how to abort out of shoots before it becomes a problem sooner this way.
Yeah, no, for sure. You know, I don't work within the cosplay space, but obviously shooting with models, been connected with some people over the last 4 or 5 years, and just, you know, I think people have been a bit better about you know, sharing on their socials, kind of like you're saying, like whether it's an Instagram story or whatever, saying watch out for this individual. You know, there was, you know, whether it was direct harassment or just feeling uncomfortable. So that's I think you're dead on the money. I think it's just, if you have an experience, share it, and then if you're friends with these people, try to share it around, spread that message. But, you know, one question I had for you that's sort of tied back to this stuff is, you know, when you're now having a one-on-one shoot with somebody, and maybe this is a tip for someone who's trying to get into this space, and I think this is going to be a great podcast and resource for people that are getting started in shooting cosplay. You know, what are some things that you think people should keep in mind as they transition into shooting this kind of stuff to try and remain professional? Things that you should do, to, you know, make that model feel comfortable, but also, you know, just to, you know, not overstep or make a wrong move.
Well, I mean, things that I've heard a lot of, and these are from my friends that tell me about some of the experiences. A lot of it's, you know, just, it starts off with creepy comments, right? Like, everybody kind of knows what a creepy comment is. Like, if you're working on addressing lighting, getting things professional, like looking great on camera. Worry about that, and that should be your main focus. It doesn't matter what you're shooting, even like model photography, even if you're shooting like boudoir or other adult material. Like, your focus as a photographer should always be about getting the product, getting the lighting right in your photos or your video. Obviously, don't touch people. Like, don't touch people without consent. Just like normal, everyday etiquette that you should have is definitely in place. So if like you have to move something because they're holding a pose or whatever, ask permission. It's very simple.
Yes.
It's not much. And this goes for guys and girls. Don't just start slapping guys' asses either. It's like, there's
Right.
right.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of there's a lot about standard consent that goes into taking photos, and I think that's a good first step for people. Just worry about your lighting. Get the product. Get the shot.
Yeah.
Don't try to think how I'm gonna hook up with this person later. That's kind of
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. It sounds pretty much what I'm hearing is, treat it like a portrait session, just like a normal portrait session. It's not, whether they're wearing a turtleneck sweater or like a revealing Pikachu outfit or whatever it is. Like it's the asking permission thing is like it's very important. Like, often there'll be something in their hair, especially if you're shooting outside, something gets in the hair or whatever. Asking permission to remove it from their hair or whatever. Sometimes you'll ask them to do it first, and then they can't find it. Whatever.
If they miss it, whatever.
Yeah.
But it helps.
But I think I totally understand what you're saying, and I think it really is. If you are someone who's transitioning, from doing, more of a, traditional portrait set to doing this kind of stuff, it really is, from the sounds of it, just the same kind of set of rules.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Nice.
Yeah, I want to touch on something that you had mentioned earlier as well, like in regard to, I thought it was really interesting, really thought-provoking, like who has the power in these scenarios, right? Like when you have the model, the cosplayer, and then on the other side you have the photographer. And it was really interesting to me, like how you were saying there's so many people who get taken advantage of because of that like power dynamic of like the photographer having more power. And it just sounded like funny to me because I'm thinking from somebody who's like, maybe if you're a photographer that wants to get into it, like obviously it's like the model, the cosplayer that has the power, right? So that is maybe something that we really need to drive home, right? And maybe something that is gonna go a long way to maybe solving this problem is just like pointing out to those models, like, and it happens in so many different industries where like the actual artist or the actual subject just gets taken advantage of, but like truly, I mean, they do have the power in that scenario, right? Or am I looking at this the wrong way?
Well, I mean, it's a little bit of give and take. So both of you are artists in the scenario, right?
Yeah.
Both of you are either the creator or you're doing something, but like, especially when you're shooting newer cosplayers or people that are just shooting their Halloween outfit, right?
Inexperienced, yeah.
So you have a lot of inexperience of people. There's a glut of people that just don't know what it's like to be in front of a camera or how to pose or really do anything, right? If they get experience, they might get better at it, but for a large period of time, it takes a lot for you to kind of know your own body, what you like and what looks good. So at that point, it is really kind of up to the photographer to help deliver a session that gets good results. So it's going to require a lot of direction, a lot of stuff. So the power dynamic is there, and not to mention that the photographer, unless otherwise spoken for, owns the copyright for all these photos, right? That's just Canadian law. So there is a bit of a power dynamic there. There's nothing that you can say that is like that it doesn't exist. But generally speaking, both parties have to be artists working together, collabing on the product, not trying to, it's no extracurricular stuff. That's kind of the long and the short of it. It's a collaboration.
For sure. And if models are, able to have access to this information, they kind of find out like, oh, this isn't normal, right? Like especially once they get a little bit more experience, they start to shoot with some more professional photographers. That's when the idea comes that like, oh,
this is what a session's supposed to be like.
It's supposed to be like this professional thing where, like you were saying, it's just like shooting anything else. It's just like a professional portrait shoot or a professional lifestyle or fashion shoot. It's the same approach. Yeah. And I guess like, really, I'm trying to be as positive as possible. Of course. No, I know. We're not going to solve it on the podcast today. But some of the things that might help, and just more reputable professional photographers getting into that space, I think is something that'll help as well, right?
Absolutely, yeah. So I think the more, and it's becoming very, very mainstream now, especially during the pandemic. People need to be creative. People need to do stuff. People are making money on OnlyFans. People are making money like selling prints and doing stuff online.
Patreon, podcasts.
So, podcasts. There's a lot of different ways in order to kind of monetize good hard work that you put into outfits, shooting photos. And I think that the more ways that people are tapping into it, and the more people that know how to create really good professional content, the more awareness that you're going to get of, how everybody should be able to improve their photos from looking at somebody out there that's creating absolutely fantastic images and getting inspired and doing something honestly for the art of it. Now, you're not going to be able to solve people that just don't have the eye for it. Like, how like there's a lot of people that go through photos, when you're doing your photo selection, and they're focused on the wrong thing. They don't really know how to
That's why I just don't show them the raws, man. I just don't show it to them.
Well, I mean, I for a lot of the people that I work with, I do, right? So I do show them the raws.
You have to sometimes,
because it is their outfit. So I just make it as a policy, because it's a collaborative effort. I want to make sure they're as happy as they are with a photo. Like, they want to make sure their face or their costume is illustrated right, and they're gonna see problems with their outfit that I'm not gonna know. I'm like, I don't know if this character has what color belt, and it's not supposed to show XYZ. So they have to be happy with it. So, and I think that's honestly, I mean, you brought up a good point. Is that a lot of people don't involve, especially if you're doing trade work, a lot of people don't involve the model in a part of the selection process. And I think that it's important. It's important for the photographer to do the culling, obviously the stuff that they're not proud of. But once that's in place, I think it's not a bad idea for more people to start involving the model or the cosplayer or the costume maker as a part of the decision-making process, so that everybody's happy with the products that you get out of it.
Yeah, I for sure do for the most part. I was mostly joking.
Mostly joking. No, I mean, yeah. Well, some people just don't know. Some people just say, hey, just pick whatever you're happy with. I'm like, okay, well, I mean,
I definitely limit the selection. Let's say that.
Oh, yes, for sure. Yeah, I mean, if I do like a 300 photo session, I'm not sending them 300 photos. They get like 40, right, to take a look at and call from.
Totally.
Yeah, I think one thing that's been really interesting, I think we've done a really good job of like drawing those parallels between the similarities between normal portrait photography and cosplay, but we also have been able to highlight a couple of things, more attention to location scouting, maybe a bit more revealing the photos that are coming through. Like you said, they're more of that knowledge expert for sure. But when it's something that's very specific and tailored to a character, they might have more of an insight towards what something should look like or whatever. And so, and I'm sure there's so many other elements of it which make it a bit more complicated or just at least different. And so one thing I was curious to know, especially when we're talking about, maybe a bit more work going into location scouting and things like that, transitioning, or not necessarily transitioning, because I know you still shoot fashion and some other things as well. What has the alteration in like that process adjusted the pricing structure at all, or is it similar, or what kind of things come into mind when you're pricing a cosplay shoot?
So often it's about some of it's definitely about licensing, so how much is going to get used. usually if you're making a product that's gonna get resold essentially, which a lot of these are, you end up with setting pricing so that knowing that there's a rough expected amount of income that's going to come from these photos, and because of the work and knowledge that you bring to the table, you kind of have to price it knowing how much money that this will generate. And that is why even you can set different prices for different people depending on how widespread that those photos will be used, right? Because licensing obviously is a big thing, and honestly, giving the cosplayer, the model, access to do their own prints and stuff like that becomes, it can get, pretty lucrative for people, including the photographers. I think everybody can kind of win on that. In terms of the amount of effort that goes into a shoot, some of them are really simple. Some of them can get really complicated. So if you're doing location scouting, you have to get licenses and permits for certain areas. There's things that definitely start getting expensive. Plus, looking around, a lot of equipment like regular outdoor portrait photography. You don't need lots of equipment sometimes. You're not, but if you're trying to make something look really epic, you're always going to be dragging around batteries. Lighting, strobes and gels and stuff like that in order to give it that extra out of world effect.
And that's why Chris has been training. You check out those guns, right? Those are gear carrying guns.
All my COVID guns. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's another element to it as well. I mean, you talked to it earlier in the show, is just that you can use natural lighting and that's okay, but typically when you get to a certain level of professionalism, you want to, I guess, in order to channel that visual effect that you want to get across, you do have to use a lot of strobe. And so there's, I guess, one of the questions I have tied back to that pricing structure is, a podcast we had recently was around, being able to almost modularize and package stuff in pricing. So is it pretty much almost always a bit more custom quoting when you're in this kind of space?
I find so. Sometimes it's just safer to do hourly, including your editing time, right? Because honestly, some editing time is going to take a long time. And sometimes you go into the shoot and you don't even know what the heck you're shooting. You just work on getting location scouting really quickly, and then you just do something. Or you have something in mind. You have 10 locations in and around the area that that are good for this anime or this type of thing, and then can kind of use that to your advantage. So the scouting can be easy, but it's just a matter of sometimes there's a lot of time involved, and that's hourly is a safe kind of way to go. But you can also modularize. I mean, like wedding packages, you just package it together. It's what do you guys want? So pricing's always a challenging one, and also you have to figure out, especially with a lot of cosplayers, a lot of them are really poor. So I mean, you don't have money for that kind of stuff. You gotta figure out what
We just recorded an hour-long podcast about pricing, and then at the end of it, I was like, I don't think I know how to price stuff.
No, by far the safest bet, and this goes for anything, pretty much anything that I do. If you don't know, and it's just kind of going into it as a black box, just say, this is in my head what my hourly rate is.
Yeah.
Multiply that by the expectation of the number of hours that this is going to take, and then that's your price.
Yeah, it's pretty fair. We've kind of got a long podcast going here, guys, which I really appreciate. It's been super fun. I definitely have one more question I want to get to. Wouldn't be able to sleep if I didn't get this question. Right. So we'll definitely need to get to it. Yeah, so the last question I want to get in here, and then we'll all get out of here and enjoy our rest of our Sunday. I've got a beer to drink when this episode's over. So
donuts, maybe some donuts.
Got some donuts, 12 donuts and 12 beers
that
to
sounds
have.
Disgusting.
Well, hopefully he's not dunking them in the beer. You know what I mean?
I mean, you're kind of dunking them in your stomach.
Well, what I was thinking
That's
is
true.
I would run a bath of beers, right? And then I can sit in there with my donuts.
Can you imagine the smell of beer
Man.
while you eat
Everyone would think
donuts?
you're an alcoholic. Yeah.
Maybe they already do.
Oh man.
Anyways, everyone's had their own struggles during COVID, my friends.
Yeah.
But anyways, before we get out of here and I can run my beer bath, it's a real thing. I'm not making it up, but whatever. You guys should try it, and it will make you a better photographer. And yeah, all of that stuff. But I was wondering, Chris, this has been really great having you here. Very thought provoking for me, and I'll definitely be reflecting on a lot of the stuff that we talked about. Very interesting to hear your backstory, your career, how you got into cosplay photography in the first place. But I'm wondering, and I'm sure the viewers, the listeners, the Michael Costas, the Megans out there are wondering what's next for Chris Chan. What's your ambitions, especially once you're able to meet people in person more again and get out shooting. Do you have anything planned right now?
Well, I've only been recently. Well, I mean, I have done it before. But I've been wanting to get more into set photography, so stills for movies and stuff like that.
Oh, cool.
I've been doing a little bit of that here and there.
I've done it. It's super fun.
It's
super
fun. I think it's there's long days, but and
craft services.
Yeah, a lot of hurry up and waiting. As typical, like as on set. But I think that having people do really good director of photography there that really light scenes really well for film, it makes it really easy for you to capture interesting and different moods from available light, which is artificial light, but available light that's there, because I'm not scrimming up like an 8-foot light anytime soon, but these guys are for films, right? And
they got guys for that.
Yeah, and you can make like any time of day look like daylight, and then you can control that daylight and the temperature of everything, and like the amount of epic type scenes that you can get from hot lights on set are absolutely amazing. So I'm excited to do more of that. I just recently put together a hardcover book with a whole bunch of like the portraits that I took from 2010 to 2020. There is a cosplay section in there, as well as other sections that I've done. So there's that, and I haven't been shooting a lot since in the pandemic, obviously because of the pandemic. So I've only had like my little bubble of people that I kind of hang out with. But once this is kind of over, whenever it is, I think that getting out and picking up the camera and doing some creative stuff is going to be interesting. And it's going to be more fun. I also want to do more compositing and stuff like that. I have a shoot in a few weeks planned that I'm doing. Cool. Some special effects compositing that will be hopefully very interesting. But it'll push my boundaries a little bit more from doing a bunch of photos in a set and focusing on doing one really, really good photo from a photo session. And that should, that's something that I did in 2011. I think that's something that I am aiming to get back into doing now.
Nice.
Really cool. Nice. And that photo book, that's available online?
It isn't. It's just the first printing, so I just want to see how it is. I think that of all the copies that I'm printing, I'll have maybe about 10 or so available. I'm not sure how I'm going to put it on sale yet, or if I'm going to put it on sale, but if I do, you guys would be the first to know.
Sounds good.
Yeah, we'll definitely shout it out on the podcast if it drops for wider distribution. In the meantime, if people want to check out some of your work, they can find you over on Instagram, right?
Instagram and my website. So I'm on altovenue.com. You can find me on my Instagram. I'm not posting a lot because of obviously pandemic, but you'll see there. I have pretty much my entire backlog from several years there, and you'll see several years of my photos also on my website, kind of organized into books and stuff like that.
Sweet. We're going to throw a link to all that stuff down in the description. and you guys can go and check that out. Chris does have a Patreon as well if you want to throw him a couple of bucks. He says he doesn't use it much, but I don't know.
I mean, I'll appreciate it, and I'll acknowledge that you're there, and I'll throw up a set here and there, but I don't use it all that often.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
But we're excited to see how your work progresses, and I loved what you were saying about getting out onto some film sets and stuff like that. I can really see your skill set being applied well there. So,
that's super fun. Thanks.
And thank you to all of our listeners for listening. Michael, it's cool if I wrap up the podcast, right?
100%. You got this.
Just gonna go for it. It felt right. Who else do we have to thank, Michael?
Megan.
Thank Megan for editing the podcast. Yeah.
We got to thank for being on.
Of course, we have to thank Chris Chan for being here.
Thank you guys.
For bringing his insights. Chris Chan, obviously, he's a big Photography Brothers fan because he knew to thank us, which is very important. You obviously want to thank. You're gonna want to thank Michael. You're gonna want to thank me, and you know who else? Who else we gotta thank, guys? We gotta thank moms today.
Yes.
We gotta thank moms today. I mean, we're shooting it. Are you putting it out today?
What do you think I am, dog? I told you my plans. I got big donut plans. I can't sit
Donuts
here.
and beers. Yeah,
I got donut plans.
All right.
Does Megan have book donut plans though?
Megan probably doesn't want to work on Sunday. So, anyways, you guys are gonna have to wait a little while to listen to this podcast. But when that does come out, probably moms are still going to deserve thanks by then, I will say.
Yeah, 100%. All year.
50-50, right?
All right, yeah. Anyways, Chris Chan, big mom proponent here on the podcast. So I think we'll give the last word to Chris. What do you want the people to hear before we get out of here, buddy?
Keep on liking and subscribing to these guys, and I've been very fortunate to have Jared and his fiance be my neighbors for a while, and she was my yoga teacher, so I was very fortunate to kind of meet you guys, and glad you guys are still in the neighborhood. So once this is all over, we can do this beer and donuts thing and get sick together.
But in a good way.
Is it?
I don't know. Anyways, I got the rest of this to play us out. Okay.
Okay.
Na 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 Photo Bros. It's super laggy through Zoom. It's not gonna line up at all. Photo Bros.
All right, thanks guys. That was good.